I'll do anything on a dare. Even dance for the intro music. How you doing? Welcome everybody to the Atheist Experience. We are live. It is Mother's Day, Sunday, May 11th, 2008. So happy Mother's Day to everybody out there who has children, and you know those of you who don't. Everybody should celebrate and have a good time for any excuse, any reason. It's a good enough excuse. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Tracie Harris. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're looking forward to getting back to a continuation of a topic that we started last time you were on here.
Yeah.
But first, as usual, we'll go through some of the announcements. And this is the point where some of the people who are watching on Google Video just kind of hit the fast forward thing. Don't go too far. I might rant a little early on today. We're a live public access television program. We'll have the number up for you shortly. For anybody who doesn't want to call into the program, well, we have email addresses where you can contact us as well. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, and the new time for that meeting is going to be 11:30. As of this morning's board meeting, we shifted everything about a half an hour, just to kind of make things easier and let us sleep in a little bit more on Sundays. Because this is one of the great things about not being a churchgoer, is you get to sleep in on Sundays. So the board meeting is going to begin at 10:30 instead of 10, and the regular ACA meeting is going to begin at 11:30 and run until 1:30, whenever people head out to come down to the studio for the show. In addition to the audio portion of this program is available for download from our website. You can go to the website at the bottom of the screen now, www.atheist-community.org, or you can go to atheist-experience.com and click on archive. There's also, in addition to the podcast, you can download the audio directly, and the video portion's available for download and viewing via Google Video, where a number of people are watching it now. I've completely lost track of where I was going with all the announcements. That's why you shouldn't fast forward, because it messes me up. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's Prophets. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information. And I'm pretty sure we're probably going to break our server, because yesterday, it's hosted by Dennis LeBay, features myself, Russell Glasser, and Schilling. Yesterday we had PZ Myers on the program, finally making good use of our digital telephone hybrid to take good phone calls and have conversations. He came out and talked a little bit about the Expelled the movie, some of his thoughts about that and the process that led up to it. We talked a little bit about science and science education, and generally had a good time. So you can go to the website there to download that podcast along with previous episodes. I'm pretty sure once it gets posted on PZ's site, we'll break our server, but you never know. So welcome to anybody who's viewing for the first time. I promise the announcements are normally better, and if you go back and watch the previous episodes and they're not, I don't know what to tell you. It's just the way it works. We're having fun. It's Mother's Day. We all had kind of a brunch in addition to the board meeting that takes place on the second Sunday of every month. The first Sunday, though, we don't have a meeting at Romeo's. We have a lecture at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. The next lecture will be the June 1st. Representative Don Howard will be coming down to talk about a little bit about what's gone on in the Texas State Legislature over the last legislative session, and maybe some things about what we can do looking forward to future sessions, and what each of us can do to get involved more in local politics as well as national. I mentioned we're sponsored by the ACA and its various meetings. In addition to those, the morning meeting and lecture, there's also a atheist happy hour that takes place every Thursday at the Dog and Duck Pub at 17th and Guadalupe, beginning at around 7 p.m. And after this program's over, everybody involved gets together and goes to El Arroyo on 5th Street. They'll put the address up now. The show's on at 4:30. We get down into El Arroyo around 5 o'clock and stay till about 7 or so. All of our events are open to the public. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come down and visit. If you're coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We'll have the number up for you shortly. You can call in to talk about the subject we're talking about today. You can call in to talk about anything else you'd like to. In particular, if you're a theist, I'd love to know what it is that you actually believe and why. And not just why you believe it, but why you think anybody else should, or if you think anybody else should. I mean, if you've got your own personal reasons, I guess good for you. But when we're talking about truth and what is or isn't true, we tend to make our judgments based on evidence and reasoning. And as such, there's one quick note I wanted to make about last week's show where we talked a little bit about circumcision. specifically with regard to routine neonatal circumcision. I don't know that we tried to cover as much as we could. We talked a little bit about medical studies and benefits, and we were giving our thoughts, but I don't think I ever made it clear that, and I may as well do it on this show, the views and opinions that you hear expressed here don't necessarily reflect every atheist or even everybody in the ACA. That's one of the things that I find both intellectually stimulating and beautiful about not having a religious dogmatic viewpoint. The diversity and lack of dogma among the secular community promotes discussion and debate. It's a good way to set aside authoritative claims and have discussions about the way things ought to be, the way we would like things to be, about what kind of decisions we need to make to benefit each of us individually, the society and group as a whole, without those prejudices, and be able to make those decisions based not simply on reason. Emotion always factors into it because we place value on certain things, and some people value some things more than others. So the idea that we can get together and somebody sent an email, oh, thank you, you atheists, for showing us just how insecure you are. So you're so insecure that you had to go and form a group. Oh, give me a break. Don't you have any friends? I mean, that's really what this is. We're getting together with a bunch of our friends to talk about things that interest us, to talk about things that are important. And one of the purposes of this program is to allow us the opportunity to interact with people who don't necessarily agree with us, who may have different opinions, because the idea of not only raising consciousness, but raising the level of public debate and discussion is appealing. And I think it's probably the only way that we're ever going to get to anything that approaches a true understanding of reality, where we can have a consensus view that really not only protects everybody's rights, but allows us to make decisions that affect everybody without imposing and violating people's rights. In addition to all of that, there is, for ACA members, a new newsletter will be coming out before long with new information about the new board. The next board will meet, I think it's June 8th, on that Sunday morning. And for members, you may want to stop by the website. There'll be some information there. If not now, then soon. You may want to hit the Yahoo list about Solstice Party that's coming up. Lots of other information. And if you have feedback, questions, criticisms, concerns, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, most of the co-hosts, some of the people behind the scenes. Please, in the subject line, put NPR or AETV or some other tag that will hopefully help it pass the spam filters. There were some people who wrote in, after last week's program that did not include that, and some of it went right into the spam folder, and luckily somebody happened to spot it. We pulled it back out and forwarded it to the appropriate person, but I would have missed it entirely. And the last note is that once we open up telephone calls, the studios put a 4-second delay on all the programs. It's something technical. It's not to keep me from swearing, although I'll usually try to avoid it. But the 4-second delay means that phone calls can be really damned annoying. So when you get through on the phone, one of the things that, if the call screener doesn't already inform you, please turn down your television and listen over the phone, and you'll be much less confused, because that 4-second delay can be really, really distracting. But that's it for the announcements. It probably took longer than anybody wanted, but here we go. How you doing?
Good.
It's Mother's Day.
Yes, it is.
But you're not a mother.
I got cats.
She's got cats. Did they get you anything for Mother's Day?
One of them, I think, got me a hairball. They left it was on my pillow when I woke up, so yeah. They think of me.
That's thoughtful.
Yeah, they're little dolls.
So last time we were on, we were talking a little bit about fables and
right.
stories.
And I didn't really get. I mean, I think we got some calls coming in, and then it pretty much there was a lot of momentum on the phone lines, and I don't think we ever really got back. And I wanted to make it kind of clear that the point to the presentation wasn't to help people tell better bedtime stories. I mean, even though I do think that, if you're a parent and you're looking for skeptical messages or something that you might be able to teach your kid in line with standard storytelling without having to go out and look for special books, or,
right.
There are special books, secular books that you can get for your kids, and that's fine. But there's a lot of skeptical lessons even among stories that are fairy stories, where maybe there is something magical about the story, but then there's a lesson in there that is a skeptical lesson
right.
about how to think about things and how to reason. And what we talked about a little bit, or actually quite a lot, we talked about the stone soup, and I'm not going to rehash that other than to say that, guy comes into town, throws a rock in a kettle, tells everybody it makes magic soup, then he convinces all the townspeople to throw in vegetables and meat and everything else and spices and makes a big pot of soup, and they have a big party, and everyone in town eats very well. And that's how this guy makes his, I don't make a living, but that's how he feeds himself. He goes town to town and tells the little story about the magic rock. And we talked about Emperor's New Clothes, and I think most people are familiar with that. It's the idea that you had all these fanciful stories about these wonderful clothes that this team of tailors was making for the king, and he was paying a ton of money for them because only the very wise could see them. And so he was so proud and needed to see this thing, and it was such a, too complex to explain, but you have to be very brilliant to see them. And so, of course, the king could see them, and no one else could. And until he goes parading through the streets naked and the child points out he's not wearing clothes. The two things that I wanted to hit today, I'm not going to go into in that much detail because they're very, very famous stories. And one was a Disney, I don't know if it's an adaptation or an original Disney story, but it was a Dumbo, which most of their older stories were adaptations, so it wouldn't surprise me if it was. But Dumbo, there's a section in Dumbo where a little mouse that he's friends with tells him that he can fly if he holds on to a magic feather. Well, in the story, Dumbo can fly without the feather, but Dumbo doesn't know it. And I don't even think at that point the mouse knows it. I think he just suspects that Dumbo could fly because of his ears. Well, he has the feather, and sure enough, Dumbo figures out he can fly. But of course, he attributes it to the magic feather. So whenever he's got the feather, he can fly, so he keeps the feather with him all the time. Well, at some point, the feather gets lost, and then Dumbo's panicked because I can only fly with the feather, is what he's thinking. Of course, the mouse knows that it's just a feather he found, and so he's telling Dumbo, you just flap your ears and do like you always do, and we'll be. And of course, he figures it out and he does it, and he realizes, hey, I can fly. I don't need this feather. And honestly, that's kind of a theme that you saw a lot, or I remember it a lot as a child, and I don't know if it's something that they don't do it as much anymore, or just having gotten older, I don't hear it as much anymore. But that idea of kind of lying to somebody, telling them that, oh, you've got this thing, this will help you do it, and then they can go do it with that. You don't really hear that so much now, or at least I don't, but I remember it in a lot of stories when I was younger, or a lot of television programs or things like that, where somebody would have that idea that this is what I need to do it, and really they're just kidding them. And then the other story was Jack and the Beanstalk, which we didn't really talk too much about, and that was an interesting one that I almost didn't bring up because, ironically, the fool in the story, or the person who does the foolish thing, is Jack, who trades the family cow, which is a necessary item for survival, for a handful of magic beans. And when he comes home, of course, his mother is completely angry with Jack and throws the beans out the window, and then, lo and behold, a giant beanstalk grows from these beans up to the clouds, and he finds a realm of a giant, and anyway, he ends up wealthy and killing the giant, and it turns out great for Jack, but who'd have thought? Because Jack's decision to trade the cow for magic beans was pretty stupid, and yet, in his stupidity, he lucked out and he got real magic beans, which in reality there aren't magic beans. But the point to that, in my mind, from a skeptical perspective, is you can guess right sometimes, even outside of reason, where somebody's got something, this doesn't make sense that these are magic beans, and it's really, the cow is something you really need, and do you really want to risk that these are magic beans? Right. And Jack does something that everybody would say was not a wise decision, but Jack got lucky.
You can believe something or make a decision, a choice that ultimately turns out to be beneficial and positive, and you can make the decision based on all the wrong reasons.
Correct.
It doesn't mean you were justified at the time. The end results do not justify either the means or the right. thought behind your initial decision.
Right.
So and it comes up sometimes when we're having discussions about God, especially when people bring up Pascal's wager. And by the way, please don't. But it's this idea of, well, what if you're wrong? What if we get to heaven and we find out that God actually does exist? Well, congratulations. You were right, even though you didn't have any good reason to think you were right. You didn't have any evidence. You didn't have any way to demonstrate to anybody else. It's pure happenstance. And I think, considering the number of potential outcomes, even if we were to find something after death, which I see no reason to believe, I think you're going to be more shocked than I am at just how wrong you were, because you asserted that not just that there was something, but something specific.
Oh, yeah.
And all I'm saying is, I have no idea what happens after death. I'm pretty sure that my body's going to rot and decay. I have no reason to believe that anything that is me will continue after death. And if it does, okay.
Gravy.
I'll be surprised. Yeah. At least I didn't, waste a significant chunk of this life believing silly things that I didn't have justification for.
Right. And I think that's part of what I wanted to get at, and we can actually backtrack it that way and start with this one and look back. But I'm calling it fairy tale apologetics, but really it's not so much apologetics, I think, as ideas. And in this case, I think you did relate it to an apologetic, which is Pascal's wager. What if I'm right?
Yeah.
Well, do you have a reason? Do you have a reason for what you believe? And if you don't, if you're just saying, well, the guy told me they're magic beans, or he showed me a piece of paper and it was written on there, magic beans, it says on the back, certified magic beans, if you just believe it because someone told you and it defies what you do know about reality, you're foolish to believe it. And if you're right, you're lucky. But that, to me, when somebody, and I actually saw a really long discussion recently where someone wrote just pages and pages, and at the end they said something, and it's funny because what they said I agreed with, but what they were implying I disagreed with. And what they said was, you can have you can have a ton of knowledge and you can be the most reasonable person on the planet, but if you're missing one piece of information and it happens to be key and you don't know it, it can screw up your whole conclusion.
Yep.
Totally agree. I totally agree.
Me too.
But what he was implying was that, so reason and knowledge aren't the only way to know something. Okay, let me just say that if you know some better way to know something than knowledge and reason, you need to write a paper or do something, because I don't know how you could live your life promoting unreasonableness and ignorance as like the best means to go and learn.
Yeah, this kind of comes down to something we talk about occasionally about, what is it, how, not only epistemologically speaking, how do we determine what is truth and knowledge and what qualifies, but also for people with religious beliefs, what justification do you have for believing in it? Is it a justification that you think should apply to everybody? For example, the people who say that, well, I know God is real because I've felt him and experienced him in my own life. Well, okay, congratulations. You have what could only be classified as a private revelation. I can't possibly assess it because I can't experience it. And when you tell me about it, that then is hearsay. It's not a revelation to me. It's hearsay to me. In order for that experience to be capable of convincing me, I would need to have that same experience. This kind of private divine revelation. I would say that if knowing that you have experienced something or accepting that you have experienced something, you may in fact be justified in your belief. I have no real way of assessing that. I do, however, suspect that you're not, because of all the possible types of experiences that people would attribute to a God. Oh, I felt his presence, or I saw him, I prayed and this happened, or I saw something else and I'm going to attribute it to God. If you took all of those experiences and put them together in a big chart, you'd see that people have attributed them to all different gods, which are mutually exclusive in many cases. And in some cases, those same experiences can be attained by can be experienced with no connection, real or implied, to anything supernatural. And we've discovered that people were wrong.
Right. So
if you had all this list of all the experiences that people have had that they kind of consider private revelation, a way of knowing something, a chunk of them are applied to gods, and some portion of those are wrong, and some portion of those are applied to gods that are mutually exclusive or inconsistent, contradictory. And then you've got another chunk of experiences where they've, we write those people off as schizophrenic, lock them up in asylums because they're being given messages from the aliens or from the underwear gnomes or whoever. And because it's not God who's giving them this private revelation, we're all comfortable in just locking them up. Well, yeah, you'd have to say that to be fair, we would have to treat them exactly the same as the people who claim that they're getting private revelations from angels and gods. There's no way to distinguish for an outsider between the two. The only reason that religion gets a free pass is tradition. We've grown up with these superstitions and myths, and as we begin to come out of our ignorance and the scales drop from our eyes, we have a kind of a fondness. Oh, we don't want to be too mean to people who believe something. You know, they're not really hurting anybody. Their belief in God isn't hurting anybody. I'd argue that in many cases it is. And if you continue going through those experiences and the ones where now we have scientific explanations for it, you know, people feel overwhelmed or overjoyed during certain musical numbers. Well, that's things that we can actually study. We can study how the brain functions. We can determine that, you know, certain notes resonate and produce different effects in the brain that can raise goosebumps or make you feel somewhat euphoric and other things. And the line, you know, as soon as we identify that and say, okay, this music, this particular frequency or sequence or whatever produces this kind of effect, what happens? Well, the people who used to attribute it to God still do. They just say, well, you've discovered, you know, the scientific explanation for it, but God is just working through, you know.
Well, now you've got stone soup.
Yes.
Now you're in the fairy tale apologetic of stone soup, where somebody is taking something that exists purely on its own and saying that I need this other thing, that it has to, the causation is this other thing. And it's like, no, if you make a pot of soup and you throw in a bunch of vegetables and you boil it up, guess what? You made soup. And you don't need a magic rock to make soup.
Yeah.
And if somebody throws a rock in that bowl and says, you know, it's because of the rock, that's why we have soup, it's like, no, you have soup because you made soup.
Once it was a chunk of salt, and then it might make the soup a little tastier.
Yeah, or salty. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like you've got there's these concepts, and the one, you know, would be the Jack and the Beanstalk, like, oh, well, I just know, I don't have a reason. It's like, well, Jack just believed that the beans were magic. Well,
Yeah.
Jack got lucky because they were magic beans, but what are the odds that you're going to come across magic beans versus the odds that somebody's stealing your cow? Okay, so, well, seriously.
Yeah, no,
All right, so.
I mean, I tend to look at a lot of, you know, every one of those claims like that is if we're just going to try and, you know, consider things within the realm of reality, within our understanding, and try and apply, let's say, a probability to things. You know, like you're saying, what's the likelihood that somebody's offering you magic beans or that they're really stealing your cow? Well, one of them is significantly more likely than the other, and therefore the disparity requires that we have much more evidence than, look, it says magic beans on the packet. And when you say, what's the likelihood that that the universe and the earth and life formed over a long period of time by completely natural means versus some transcendent super being decided to tinker, okay, there's a huge disparity there. And that means that we need a significant amount of evidence to demonstrate the likelihood, that the likelihood of this God being is sufficient to say, yep, that's the more believable answer. And I don't see it. And for those people who do, I'd love to know why.
Yeah.
I used to, and you know, I've talked about it before. To be quite honest, it was out of a mixture of apathy, fear, comfort. The moment that I made a conscious decision to give a damn whether my beliefs were true or not, everything started to change. Once I decided, yeah, I want to be able to justify my beliefs so that I can demonstrate to anybody else the truth that Jesus, you know, came and died for our sins and was resurrected so that we may have eternal life. That is the thing that I set out to be able to prove to anybody. And the only problem is that rather than just assuming that it was true, and rather than just accepting, you know, the authoritative word of people who were supposedly smarter or better read and studied than I am, I decided to investigate it. And the only fair way to do it is to consider the claims and all of the evidence as well as the objections. And if you find that your claims are being supported by logical fallacies, by misunderstanding of science, then all of a sudden the ground begins to crumble away beneath what you're believing.
Right, and that's the emperor's new clothes. What you did is you said, I really would like to see the clothes. Yeah. So I'm going to do what I need to do. I will study, I will apply myself, I am going to do whatever I have to do to merit and make myself worthy to see these clothes. No matter how hard you worked, the emperor was still naked. And at some point you just have to say, I'm sorry, dude, you're naked. Yeah. You're walking down the street naked, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend you're wearing clothes just to make you feel good. You should be embarrassed because you're walking down the street naked. And that is, to me, another one of the apologetics where I'll have somebody just banging their head against the wall trying to show me there is something there, and everything they show me is nothing. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you're showing me nothing, and you're telling me it's something. At some point, you're going to have to show me something. Otherwise, you've given me nothing, and you're just asking me to call it something. And I need something in order to call it something. I can't look at nothing and tell you, oh yeah, I see something. That's the emperor's new clothes. Yeah. And so you got the stone soup where you've got this causation thing where somebody says, this thing that I felt it's got to be God. It's like, oh, so it couldn't be anything else. Like, there's no natural cause for that. Like, even though I can go to this website and this guy's describing exactly what you're describing, except he's on LSD. Yeah. Okay, there's no, or I go to this other website and this person does meditation and look, they're using the same verbiage you are. I mean, you have these causes of a thing and you're saying it's the rock. It's not because I'm making soup, it's because this magic rock. It's like, well, whatever helps you sleep at night, but that rock is not making soup. And if you take your kid to the hospital because your kid is sick and you come home and she's better, it's not because God cured her, it's because you took her to the hospital. It's not a rock, it's because you made soup.
And if you don't take her to the hospital and she dies, you deserve to be reamed on public access television and accused of being murderers, as I did. And as a note to the viewers of the show, the family in Wisconsin, I believe it's Wisconsin, who did exactly that, they've now been indicted. And their other children have been removed from their care while the rest of this plays out. We read a lot more on the details. I didn't bring the news articles in. The girl kept getting sicker and sicker. People continually begged and pleaded and for the family to take him to a doctor. And instead, they sat there and said, no, it's God's will. If God wants to heal her, we'll just pray harder. She just needs to have more faith. She'll make it through. God will heal her. If she doesn't, it's a weakness of her faith. And by the way, we believe she'll be, if she dies, we'll just go ahead and resurrect her. You're not just nuts. You're criminally nuts.
Yeah, dangerous.
And your daughter's dead because of it, and you deserve to be brought up on charges. And I barring some unknown element of the case or some element that I'm not familiar with, I hope they find your ass guilty and rescue your other children from the same type of ignorance. Also, I hate to put Wisconsin in the we're just too crazy category as a state on a whole. There was a story this week of a family whose 90-some-odd-year-old grandmother died on the one and only toilet in the house, and they left her there for months. Months. On the recommendation of their minister, who said if they just prayed hard enough, she'd come back from the dead. And, the mother told the little kid, there were two little kids there, that, this is hard to say, the decomposition and deterioration of grandma and the smell were because the devil was actively trying to keep her from being resurrected, and that they just needed to pray harder. And oh, by the way, they shouldn't talk about this because grandma pays the bills. And they wouldn't want anybody to come take grandma away. So I think there's an element of religion here and also an element of maybe greed. But I have a hard time believing that greed on its own
can do something that sick.
Yeah, that's just, so the mother and this self-proclaimed bishop or minister, whatever he is, who recommended that they leave grandma there. That they're being questioned and interviewed, and we can only hope that some charges are filed there too, because, on the one hand, while it's gross and unsanitary and insane, I'd have to say, since there are some other things less impactful that I'd call child abuse, keeping your dead grandmother in the one and only family bathroom, telling your toddler that you're praying to bring her back to life, and please just ignore the stench and decay because that's just the devil trying to have his way, that's child abuse. If you don't think it is, sorry, you're immoral. You don't care. Why is it that I, as a childless, non-religious person, care more about your kids than you do? I mean, I want them to get to a hospital and get treatment when they need it. I don't want them to have to see their dead grandmother sitting on a toilet for months. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It just drives me crazy. And that leads us into the Dear Abby bit.
Yeah, and this is Dumbo's magic feather. This is, to me, because...
What fairy tale goes to the dead grandmother? That's... Whew. Think about that.
Probably a lot of them. I mean, Jack and the Beanstalk works because they're thinking basically that something's going to happen that there's just no reason for.
Yeah, now if grandma gets up and starts walking around, that doesn't mean you were right. You got lucky. Yeah,
because there's no reason to think grandma's coming back.
Might make a good zombie movie, but it's pretty gross for your kids.
Here's the thing. It's like, in general, if somebody's telling me about the magic beans, it's usually not harmful.
Yeah.
In general, if somebody's telling me about the Emperor's New Clothes, it's usually restricted to themselves. It's not that harmful. When somebody's telling me about the stone soup, they've got this idea about causation, it's usually not harmful. But Dumbo's magic feather is harmful. And this is the one that I think disturbs me the most. And we got... I think we talked about it right before the show, but I don't think I talked about it on the air. Mm-hmm. I'm getting confused about what I maybe said and what I didn't say. But we got a letter in from somebody who was saying, give religion a little bit of pat on the back because, it does help people who can't get through life sometimes. There's people who are addicted to drugs who, a lot of times they use religion to get off of drugs, and there's other people who have trying times and they say, I couldn't have gotten through it without God. It gives them something to lean on. Right. It helps them believe that they can fly so that they can. Well, the idea of the magic feather is not that you're supposed to be beholden to that magic feather forever until you die, afraid to ever try to fly on your own. That's the wrong message. You're supposed to use a thing like that, and I don't think you ever need to use a thing like that, but if you're going to give somebody something like that, the idea should be that eventually you come clean and say, it's just a feather.
It's
and
Santa
you can
Claus.
Do this. Right, and you can do this.
I'm not a big fan of using Santa Claus as a tool to make children behave. If you want to have a bit of fun with it and everything else, that's fine, but this idea of using Santa Claus as Dumbo's magic feather to promote good behavior, I think that's wrong. But at least it goes away.
Right. And when you were saying that, I had to laugh because I was just thinking about using Santa to make children behave. I was like, what if you had the evil Santa that would come and beat them if they misbehave? It's I use Santa to make my kids behave.
Change the letters a little bit.
That's right.
Santa, you behave, and if you don't, Satan comes to get you.
That's right. So you better behave. Santa knows when you've been bad, and I told you what he does to bad children.
Satan Claus.
Anyway, the thing about Dumbo's magic feather, when we got this letter from the guy who was saying that, hey, religion does help people, it does give them this sort of confidence that they lack sometimes. And there are some religions that are based on, you need to do this for yourself.
Yeah.
But there are some religions that are not based on that. There are some religions that actually say that you are arrogant, that you are prideful, that you are, just a horrible person.
Reprobate.
Yeah, if you question that you can live your life without this religion or without this God, this is you're going to hell. And what those religions do is they destroy your self-esteem, and then they hand it back to you in little pieces. And then that's supposed to be helpful, to give you enough to get by. And So you have religions that tear down children, that take children, and they say you are sinful, you are evil, you are inherently bad, and you made baby Jesus die, and he was tortured, and he did all of this because you are just so worthless. And just thank the Lord that He is so infinitely merciful that He loves you despite the fact you are a nasty little thing, and just be happy, Jesus loves you. So then these kids come out of this, and who knows what's left of them once this is done. But the only worth they're supposed to have is the worth that God wants them, loves them and wants them in heaven. But those religions tend to also create a parenting style that sets these children up for failure. So in other words, you set it up to where the kid cannot succeed in real life, and then when the child gets old enough to want to try to live their own life and make their own decisions, they're so ignorant that they fail. And then they think to themselves, the world was so much better when it was just black and white. Maybe mom and dad were right. Maybe the preacher was right. I just need to do what God wants me to do. I need to go back. That black and white world was just so much easier to navigate than all this crazy gray. And I can't make it. It doesn't seem like I can make an intelligent decision. Everything I try to do gets mucked up. So,
essentially, they built a mindset that is incapable of dealing with reality.
Right.
If you ever use Dumbo's feather for anything, it should be as not as a stick and carrot motivation, but as a way of showing people what their capabilities are.
Right.
A way of allowing them to come to terms and deal with reality on their own.
Right.
What you're talking about, granted, the way Tracie phrased it isn't necessarily the way every Christian is going to phrase it.
But it's the same message.
But if you don't think that's the message,
ask yourself why salvation is necessary. Well, it's like, ask yourself why salvation is necessary if you don't think that people are going to pay.
Yeah, I mean, when given the message, and I'm guilty of this myself from 20 years ago or so, when delivering the message, the emphasis and the focus is on how much God loves you, that He's willing to save you from this. But the justification for why you're deserving of this in the first place, at least among some denominations, let's not paint everybody with the same brush, although, change your name if you don't want to get in that bucket, is that, Adam and Eve sinned, and that original sin progressed throughout humanity, that we are all reprobates, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. This is the critical aspect of Christianity, of why salvation is even necessary. And the fact that, you want to spin it as this, in one direction, makes me want to, even go further than Tracie did and emphasize the other direction even more. What you've got, and I've said this before, is God is a mafia boss. He wants you to pay him his vig, and he'll hug you and kiss you on the cheeks and tell you you're a good guy, and as long as you keep paying the vig, you're fine. And as soon as you don't, he sends a couple thugs around to break your legs. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
Don't make it sound like it's actual justice, that it's actually a deserved process. It is an immoral, unjust premise, and it's not real.
Right, and well, the response that I got was, and don't get me wrong, this particular theist was very polite, very open-minded. He said, you're right, there's a lot of people that do that to their kids. There are religions that teach that way. He was not being, adamant. He was very understanding. And what he said, and I had already said this in my response to him, what I had put forward was, there's a lot of things, there's enough out there in reality to destroy a child's self-esteem that we don't need to add this to the mix. There's plenty of things that'll do that without religion. And he wrote back and he said, he kind of reiterated that, and I don't know if he missed what I had said or if he was just agreeing with it, but he said, well, there's other things that can cause a child to lose their self-esteem. And I wrote back and I said, yes, that's why I had said that there are other things that can do this. I go, but in the court of public opinion, generally, when a thing tears down a child's self-esteem, we label it as bad.
Yeah.
You usually would get in trouble for a thing like that, or at least have people looking down on you. And this is the one thing that I know of that rips apart a child's self-esteem that we as a society say is not only good, but is necessary to make the child good.
Yeah.
And that's the part that just is right over my head.
How many movies have you seen where you've got the drunken, abusive father who's, you're worthless. You're never going to amount to anything. I
Right.
wish your mother had killed you before you was born.
Yeah.
And they play them up, and everybody gets it. Oh, that's the bad guy. I mean, that's the terrible father. That's the guy who's mentally abusing his child. And yet, okay, I guess there's something to be said about the tone used, but is there really? I mean, sure, if you have a puppy, you could go, oh, I really hate you. I wish if I could kill you, I could just stick a knife right through your head right there. Or yell at it to tell it how much you love it. Penn Jillette actually did that in an episode of Bullshit. But, we've talked about that before. How you say something is important. But so is the message. And no matter how you wrap it, telling somebody that they are
worthless,
inherently worthless,
yeah.
or born flawed and bad, and responsible for things that they're not responsible for. It's abuse. It diminishes self-esteem, and it's harmful.
Let's go ahead and take a couple calls, and then we'll get to the letter.
Okay, we'll come back to the Dear Abby thing. Is it Alex?
Yeah, hi. Hello?
Is our speaker not on there? Did we not check that? I don't see a light.
Hold on a minute, Alex.
Hang on a second, Alex.
We're working on it. Well, it was working earlier.
So just stay on the phone and I guess keep calling. The light's flickering.
Okay, wait a second. I think they're getting it.
Can you hear me?
We got a bad speaker. Go figure. I tell you what, while they're trying to get Alex, we're just going to leave you live. They're going to fix the speaker. And while that's going on, I want to go ahead and read an email I got today. I'll go ahead and call it the email of the week. Although,
is
who
it
knows?
working?
I see the light, but I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Alex.
Hey.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good.
I wanted to bring up a couple things. First, congratulations to the nonprofits for their successful interview yesterday.
Did you get to hear it?
Oh yeah, I got to hear it. It was great.
We were glad to have PC on, and we're looking to have him back and have some other guests too.
Who are you thinking of getting in?
I'm not going to tell you.
You bringing Dawkins in?
I'm not going to tell you.
The second thing I wanted to bring up was a book recommendation. I just finished reading Irreligion by John Allen Paulos.
Yeah.
It's a great book for the math nerd who wants to have some interesting arguments against God. So
I haven't read it yet, but it's on the short list. If for no other reason than Innumeracy is one of my all-time favorite books, and John Allen Paulos he's got a way of explaining things that I think more people should get involved and appreciate, because Irreligion was Innumeracy was an important book, both in opening my eyes to the mistakes we make about understanding the very, very big, the very, very small numbers, probability, statistics, things like that. And I'm looking forward to his take in Irreligion as well.
Yeah, that's a great book. It's a short read, too. It's only like 140 pages long.
Wow. That is short.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty short, but it's concise and it's clear, and I recommend it to everybody.
Cool. Did you have anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right.
So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
You get the best caller so far award for getting in and saying what you had to say.
I'm not able to watch the show because I live in Florida.
Okay.
So, speaking of which, I would like to offer an apology for all the shenanigans that have been coming out of Florida. I didn't do it, so don't blame me.
But thank you for the public apology on behalf of their state.
Although I will say that I'm happy to report that the Academic Freedom Bill died, and the I Believe license plate died. So it seems that while some people are trying to make some changes, reason is still kind of edging out right now. So.
But we do have to thank Florida for taking the focus off Texas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's like it's like the old joke of I got a friend who's from Oklahoma, and every time I tease him about it, he always says, "Well, at least I'm not from West Virginia." So.
It's just like the one-up of stupidity.
So if you're listening in West Virginia, please feel free to email us. And thanks a lot for the call, Alex. We appreciate it.
All right.
All right, thanks.
The email address is tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself and most of the other people involved. We like hearing from everybody from all around the world. I'm really enjoying talking to some people in other countries, but to get their perspective of how they view the United States in general, how they review the religious issues in the United States, the battles of creationism over evolution, the intrusion of dominionist mindsets. Comments like our Texas state governor, Rick Perry, who went on the 700 Club to say that secularism is a virus that is seeping into our culture. And as I mentioned, Governor, you have a standing invitation to call in and talk on the show anytime you'd like, and explain how it is that you think you can be, fairly represent everybody. I mean, as a private individual, you're entitled to whatever opinion you want, and you can express it. And I support your right to actually even go on the 700 Club and say it. I'm just concerned, as somebody who is a decent, law-abiding citizen, where do our differences lie? What is it about me that, and the rest of us, that you feel comfortable denigrating just because we don't happen to agree with your religious ideology? Now, to be fair, I do the same thing to some degree. The difference is that when I give my explanations for why I think something is harmful or child abuse or not, or why I disagree with a particular religious view, I tend to give reasons. I tend to give explanations. I tend to have discussions. If I came on the show every week and just said, religion's a delusion, you guys are all immoral people who are destroying your children, you're ruining the United States, you're violating my rights, see you next week. That's crazy. I'm about promoting discussion and dialogue, and I'm interested in why you believe what you believe.
Beyond votes and money?
Yeah, beyond votes and money and hair.
See, that's the thing.
See, he wins because he's got way better hair.
If you represented as much money and as many votes as religion, you would not be insulted as a secularist.
Yeah, I would. And I don't think I'd ever be represented by that much money because
No, I don't mean that you wouldn't feel insulted. I mean that those insults wouldn't be hurled by politicians.
Oh.
Yeah.
Crafty. So we got, is it James?
Yes.
How you doing, James?
Well, your problem comes in, you're about 8 seconds behind on the telephone, or ahead on the telephone than what you're on the TV.
Yeah, it's a.
And if they don't expect it, they're going to be sitting there thinking that if you're not familiar with it. But anyway, going back to what Tracie had said a while ago, about when someone would say that way, like a murderer would go back and sit there and talk, and then say, well, God forgives me, this and that. To me, that's about like going and saying, like, I hate saying it to sound facetious in that sense, but Catholics go to a priest when they commit sins outside, and then they go to confession.
Yeah, that's a hell of a gimmick.
And it's repeated over and over and over. I've got a friend that can, God almighty, excuse me what I said. But anyway, he does something against...
I'll throw in a God Almighty on that one.
On his, 2 times on his wife constantly. And he goes, and Matt knows that I'm an old gay man. I got a gay friend that was sitting in there, went at least 4 times to confession at the church, to the Catholic Church. And he can, if you don't wait on him and jump, he was older than I was. He's PhD holder at UT, taught at UT, had money coming there which direction. But if he needed something done, and you're not right there within the next 20 minutes, he'd pick up that phone and curse you out like crazy. He showed no remorse for his anger or hatred to you, but then goes over, like I say, to church and goes to confession and says, forgive me. But also, thinking that way, then another point I would like to go back to, because within my own self, I concentrate within my own body self, my energy. Okay, you're going to say that. If I get a headache, I try to concentrate on that headache and try to make it go away.
Okay.
I don't go to confession and ask for help. I do it within my own self.
You take an aspirin?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Just wait for it to go away.
How long?
I know that you...
How long does it take to go away?
Sometimes I achieve it, sometimes I don't.
Then you just...
And when you do achieve it, how long does it normally take?
When I do, I would say maybe within 5 minutes.
Okay.
If I really concentrate on it hard.
Right.
I used to go to, as I'm on a K, I used to go to esoteric classes and stuff.
You go to what classes?
Esoteric classes.
Okay.
Concentrating within yourself.
Right.
Okay, that's the way I've learned to try to use my own body energies and this and that and everything, whatever you want to call it.
Feedback.
But that way I do it, and sometimes I achieve it, sometimes I don't. But like I'm saying, I think it's within ourselves to believe or whatever it is. And I know, as you say, an aspirin no. Sometimes if I take the aspirin, that doesn't help. So
Yeah.
That's true.
That's true. I've had headaches that aspirin didn't help. But the question is, in the times when it works for you, when it goes away in about 5 minutes, don't you think that it's possible that it would have gone away in 5 minutes anyway? I've had headaches that lasted just a few minutes and went away, even though I didn't concentrate or do anything special. So isn't it possible that it could have just gone away on its own, even if you hadn't concentrated on it?
maybe not, because I don't know. See, that's the
that's
point
fair.
that you don't, that I can't prove, disapprove.
Yeah, that's fair. And while I understand that from my point of view, you seem to be putting more significance on the hits than the misses, and overemphasizing what causation factors may have been involved.
But just to be fair, it could, especially if he suffers from like stress headaches,
right.
It could be something where if he relaxes and is able to relax, it could help. But then if he gets a different kind of a headache,
like you say, you meditate to within your own level.
But then if he gets some sort of other type of headache, it might not help.
Sure. Different reasons for pain and stress, high blood pressure, all kinds of other things that are real medical problems. Just sitting down and relaxing. This is why a lot of people think that when they pray, God takes the pain away. Because sometimes when you just relax, now what you might call energies or whatever,
right.
putting some kind of label on it, I don't see any reason to use that label because it implies something supernatural when what we're really talking about is the body's ability to heal itself. And if you get yourself relaxed, you kind of facilitate that type of thing.
That's what I'm saying. I say within ourselves we can do things, and because like as Tracie said, if the guy goes there, he's a murderer sitting in jail, so God forgave me. Then he is realizing within himself what's right and what's wrong. And that's where I look at it. That the preacher didn't, or whatever.
I guess you wouldn't ask to be forgiven for something unless you thought it was wrong.
Well, you might. That's the interesting thing that I was going to. Were you a Catholic at some point, James?
No.
Okay.
I used to go to I started at the Baptist church and hated it. All they begged for was money.
The Lottie Moon Christmas offering.
Shoot. No, then from there I went to the Christian church, and it was completely different. It wasn't always for financial gifts to the church. You could go, you could help, and they were satisfied with it, to go cut the grass or mow paint or do something within it because it wasn't that big of a church. But really, it was completely different than the Baptist. And then when I got older, when a family member, which was my mother, that got sick, and I stayed home with her, and the Baptist church come here and told me one day she hadn't been coming, which was Hyde Park Baptist, and she hadn't been coming over. What was wrong with her? I said, she's a stroke patient, and she said, that's home, and after she got out of the hospital, was stayed in bed. And the idiot told me this away. She's not going to get up and walk out of that bed. Why don't you take her place and come to our church? And I said, well, if the house caught on fire, who's going to be accused of neglect and let it burn to death in the house? I said, not me. Oh, you going to take that responsibility? He shut up and walked out of the house. So
I tell you what, look, I got one quick question for you, James. Are we going to see you at the Pride Festival this year?
Maybe. Getting old, young man. Even though you're losing it, I don't know if you shave your head or you're losing it.
I cut it down, trim it every week. I didn't cut it as short this week.
But see, I've still got mine. That's the only advantage I have on you is hair, not age. So if I make it, I'll be there.
All right.
I'll stop by and see you somewhere or another if I do.
Definitely do. It's always good to talk to you. Thanks for calling, James.
All right, bye-bye.
The one question I was going to ask him, which is why I asked him if he's Catholic, is he brought up this idea about confession. And as somebody who I've never been a Catholic. One of my mother's grandmother was a Catholic till the day she died, and my grandmother was a Catholic until she became a Baptist. But I never understood the whole thing about confession. And I've had friends who are Catholic. I've tried to get explanations. I've done research. We studied and even talked about the selling of indulgences, and of course that applies to somebody after they're dead. But this whole idea of confession really bugs me because if you go in there and Father, bless me for I've sinned. I told 4 lies, and slept with the basketball team. And he tells you, do X number of Hail Marys and Our Fathers or whatever. And so if that is a viable absolution of sin, and it seems to me the Catholic Church should not be opposed to anything. You should be able to walk in and say, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. I had sex while wearing a condom with another man, while filming little boys or whatever it is that the Catholic Church says is a sin. You should be able to go into confession and just say, so you could be a homosexual, a practicing Catholic homosexual, and maybe this is the way they get away with it, because I know a few, who just, once a week you go into the confessional booth and talk about how many times you had sex. Because for you, having sex is automatically a sin, where the rest of us, it's only a sin if we wear a condom.
So you get the fun of actually having the sex, and then you get to go and talk about it.
Yeah, although why anybody would want to sit through, like a Latin mass or
and
something.
then, yeah, exactly.
Make a game out of it. See how many times you can get the priest to
Are you saying that
cough
you
or
can't?
gasp
Are you
or
saying that
something.
they can't do that?
Evidently. I mean, you can't say that something is. I don't know. If you're a Catholic priest, please call in. But if you know something about how this works, I mean, if somebody is a homosexual, which the Catholic Church would generally condemn, could they continue to have a normal homosexual lifestyle? And I reluctantly use that word, but and still just go into confession every week and say, me and my partner had sex 18 times since last week. Great. Please forgive me. Okay, that'll be, maybe they'll give you so many Our Fathers and Hail Marys that you couldn't possibly have sex again. You'd just be constantly counting beads. Oh, Hail
That's
Mary,
funny.
full of grace, blah, blah, blah. So you have a Dear Abby letter that we want to get to.
What's ironic is this actually pulls into Mother's Day, in addition to Dumbo's feather. Now, I was talking before the calls about the idea of setting a child up for failure, and then when the child fails, you say the reason your life is a wreck and you can't function in life is because you just don't have God with you. So if you just come back and be in the church, your life will be much better. And of course, the child who has not been taught to critically think and questions nothing and simply did things that she was told not to do, wrecks her life and then comes back and, everything does seem better when I just do what I'm told and I don't have to think and I don't try to figure this stuff out and just listen to what it says to do and I just do it. And, for years afterwards, when someone comes to her and says, you don't need this, she'll be saying, yeah, I tried it on my own, but my life just really came together after I came back to God.
Yeah.
Well, here's an example of exactly how that's done. Dear Abby, our 16-year-old daughter Nola is pregnant. My husband and I are very disappointed. We do not believe in abortion, so we're going to have Nola homeschooled until the baby is born, and then the baby will be given up for adoption. What I need is advice on how to deal with our 10-year-old daughter. Our youngest knows the facts of life, but does not fully understand that girls who are not married sometimes get pregnant and have babies. I obviously do not want the same thing to happen to her, so I want her to understand that this is wrong without demonizing her sister, whom she loves and looks up to. There's so much wrong with this that I don't even know where to start with it.
It's almost fractally wrong.
Yeah. First of all, don't be disappointed with your 16-year-old daughter. Be disappointed that you're crappy parents. If you taught your 16-year-old the same level of, or I should say, if you
Facts
didn't
of
teach,
life,
didn't teach her on the same level that you're not teaching your 10-year-old, then I don't even know how you have the right to be surprised that she's pregnant. A 10-year-old who doesn't know that there are single mothers in the world,
Doesn't know the facts of life.
Either your child knows it and you just don't talk to your child enough to know that your child knows it, or your child doesn't know it, and congratulations, because you have just succeeded in raising a completely ignorant child to the age of 10. At 16, you're talking about 6 years after 10, your kid probably, I'm guessing, had the abstinence-only talk. I doubt that when you're talking about the facts of life, but we didn't talk to her about, how you can get, if she doesn't know that you can get pregnant outside of marriage, how does she understand the facts of life?
Yeah.
Because the facts of life have nothing to do with marriage. The facts of life generally means the mechanics of sexuality. And if the child understands the mechanics of sexuality, unless you told her that by some magic mode you can only get pregnant within marriage, the 10-year-old should understand that you can get pregnant whether you're married or not.
I guess, though, if you believe in magic, maybe that's the case. That's a question.
I'm just saying it's not a doctrinal thing to.
No.
There's no doctrine that I know of in Christianity where they teach people that you're unable to get pregnant unless you're married.
Well, see, I was first thinking that as, I was going to pose it as the challenge of the week to the theists, which, I kind of stopped doing because none of you guys answer because, well, usually there's not an answer. But, I was thinking, well, if sex outside marriage is wrong, why didn't God make it that you could only get pregnant while you're married? But I came up with the answer right away. There's no way Mary could have got knocked up and had Jesus if you can't get pregnant outside of marriage.
That's right.
Clearly, that's the way God wants it. Matter of fact,
also,
Mary wasn't married when she had, became pregnant with Jesus. Maybe your daughter's conception was immaculate too.
And the other issue that I have is with, we're very disappointed.
Yeah.
You're disappointed. Let me just explain that your pregnant daughter could have come home and said that she has HIV and that she's going to die. And you're disappointed. You should just feel lucky that she's not got HIV and that she's just dealing with a baby. Because this could have been, you could have a dead child on your hands at this point instead of a pregnant child because of your, what can only be described as gross negligence in not teaching your child what she needed to know to protect herself. You don't believe in abortion. Well, does she? Have you even asked her? Does her opinion even matter, or does it not matter at all? Because honestly, if you're thinking that she's going to do everything you tell her without question, then maybe you're not even aware she has opinions at 16. Maybe you should talk to her about her opinions and what she thinks about things. And maybe it's not just about you tell her what to do and she does it. That's not what children are. Children are people. They're human beings. When they hit 16, they have their own ideas. They have their own things that they want to do. They are not going to do everything you tell them to do.
Yeah,
and you need to prepare them for what can happen if they don't do everything that you think they ought to do. We talked about speeding.
Yeah.
The idea that, you get your kid a car, you've taught him to be responsible, but let me just remind you that you were 16 once. Reach back into your head, take a crowbar and open your mind, and remember when you were 16 years old and ask yourself how responsible you were then, or are you just lucky that you came out of it as good as you did? Because you're ignorant at 16. There's a lot of things you don't know. And as parents, our job should be to teach them what they don't know and prepare them for what is possible, whether it's what we agree with or not. And with the car, you get the kid the car and you say to them, drive carefully. Obey the rules of the road. Be careful for the stop signs, the stoplights. Don't hurry through a light if it's yellow. Don't speed. Don't drink and drive. For goodness sakes, please don't drink and drive. But you can't say don't drink and drive, and if you call us up and you are drunk at a party, we're going to come down there and kick your ass and blah, 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 blah. The kid has to feel comfortable calling you and saying, Mom and Dad, I'm blitzed at a party and I can't drive. Because if you've got the kid thinking Mom and Dad are going to be disappointed and hate me for the rest of my life if I call them up and tell them that I'm fucked up at a party, guess what? They're not going to call you. They're going to get in the car and try to drive home. So please, please, please make sure that your children understand that they will never be a disappointment to you. That they're not going to be, it's not a disappointment. Okay, you made a mistake. You had sex, you're pregnant, we got an issue here that we need to figure out. Let's figure it out. It's all right, we still love you. Let's find out what we need to do here. What's going on? Who is the boy? What did you do? How long have you been going out? What are you comfortable with? Is baby something that you would want? Are you going to be okay with adoption? Are you going to be, to not even give the child, it's like we don't believe in abortion. Well, does she? And that's one of the things that really bothers me.
Well, in their case, it may not matter. And by the way, on the driving things, tell them to stop texting. If you want to talk on the phone, I'm almost okay with that. If you got a Bluetooth, thing to where you're actually mostly focused, because that's not too different from talking to somebody else. Stop texting. I kid you not. Driving to work the other day, hand on the cell phone, driving with this hand while texting with this hand and not looking at anything around. You're going to kill somebody. Are you crazy? But back to this. It may not matter. There's some of this parenting where it's, as long as you live under my roof, you'll do what I say. So she may not have any choice in this. It may not matter to these particular parents what her views are on. I'm opposed to abortion, and as long as you live under my roof, you never have. Well, all right, cool. Move out. If I realize that it's a difficult situation. I don't want to beat up parents. They have principles. They're sticking to them. They have a right to those principles. They have a right to try and convince others, including their children.
Sure.
But your children have rights too. You failed as parents. You did. You failed as parents. You failed to properly educate your children to prepare them to deal with reality. You failed to give them, as Tracie was pointing out, the comfort that they could come to you when there was actually a problem or when they didn't disagree with you. You failed to instill in them the forward thing, the ability to form their own opinions and be okay with it. I'm not saying that we should never discipline children, let them run wild in the house, and let them talk back, and let them be their own person and express. No. Encourage them to question everything. And the more respectful you are of them and their opinion, the more respectful they're likely to be of you and your opinion. The more likely you are to have a good dialogue that proves beneficial to not only your child, but perhaps to you too. This old, oh, you can't teach a new dog. Yes, you can. You can teach an old dog whatever the hell you can teach a puppy. They're just a little slower sometimes. Stop being slow. Stop being bad parents. Stop being disappointed.
Right. And ask yourself why you didn't know she was having sex.
Yeah.
What is it that made her unable to come and talk to you about something that should have been a very important decision? Here she is, she's become sexually active, and you don't even know this.
And you have unrealistic expectations, by the way.
Well, that's why you don't know it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the two are unconnected. It's not a mystery why you didn't know she's having sex.
Right.
It's because she knew that you would be unaccepting of her, that you would be disappointed with her, that you would not understand what it is that she's making a choice here. She made a choice, and you were unaware of this choice, and she couldn't come and talk to you about this choice because she knew your mind was so glued shut that you wouldn't even be able to dialogue with her about it. And that is not the type of parent I think anybody should want to be.
Yeah, and while I'm not completely sure what all of their views are, based on what they've expressed and the situation that they're in and what their reaction is to the situation, these to me seem like abstinence-only parents.
Yeah.
That you're just supposed to remain chaste until marriage. And I'll give you credit. That method will guarantee that you don't get pregnant. If you don't have sex, you're not getting pregnant. That includes Mary, by the way. But you're being unrealistic with your expectations if you think that. And I don't understand how this happens so often with parents. I mean, not only with handfuls of parents, but I mean, there are school groups and organizations where abstinence-only education is what they teach in school. Have you completely forgotten what you were like as a teenager?
I think they have.
I mean, don't pretend. Don't do this back in the old days crap. Well, we just didn't do stuff like that when I was a kid. Maybe you're homely.
No.
But other people were having sex.
Right.
I'm sorry that you didn't get in on the action, but kids are going to have sex. Do you know why? Because it's a biological imperative. That's what puberty is. It's nature encouraging the reproductive cycle.
Right.
It's saying, hey, let's get busy and start having kids. And what you're doing is saying, nope, hold off. Yeah, that'll work.
Well,
just say no.
And it's not even just about saying don't do it. It's about saying if you do, you're completely unacceptable.
Right.
That's the thing that I think clinches it for me. It's like you have a child that couldn't come and talk to you, and you're disappointed with her.
Yeah.
That's what blows my mind. You set up a situation. It's your job as a parent to keep the lines of communication open. It's not the child's job to make a relationship with their parents. It's a parent's job to create a relationship in a family environment for the kid. And if that child doesn't feel like she's even able to come and talk to you, like you would be able to even understand what she's going through or what she wants to say or how she's feeling, my God, what have you done?
Amen.
What have you done? And I'm tired of people messing up their kids. And this is the situation where you create a child that cannot function, they can't come to you, you can't talk to them, there is no adult advice that they're getting, and they're making these choices that are going to affect them, and you're keeping them ignorant, you're not available to them as a source of inspiration or a source of information, and then when the child gets in trouble because they were ignorant, you say, I'm so disappointed with my child, and we got to homeschool her so the neighbors don't find out about that. It's not about where did I mess up, and my God, what did we do wrong here, that our kid was so afraid of us that she couldn't come and talk to us.
There is one bit of good news in this story. These particular parents are so colossally irresponsible that they're willing to completely shirk any responsibility and put the kid up for adoption.
Correct.
And the reason I say it's a good thing is that now we've increased the likelihood that this next generation from this gene pool will not be subjected to the same kind of ignorance and apathy that their parents received. I can only hope that this kid goes to a good home where there are parents who are loving, intelligent, responsive, encouraging, who form a proper family that's not just put your foot down, you're doing what I'm saying, and if you don't, then you're just you're the screw up.
Instead of you can come to me with anything.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to come to me, and we'll talk about it. I might not be happy about it, but I definitely want to know what's going on in your life, and if it's something I'm not going to like, I still want to know, and I'm still going to love you, and it's not not going to matter. We'll figure it out. That's what you need to offer.
Right.
And what I'm saying here is, this is parents. I mean, they don't, like you said, they don't talk about their religious perspective, but it exudes from the letter. Mm-hmm. So you've got these parents who are, if they're not doing this for religious right reasons, they are the model religious right parents based on the situation, whether they are or not. You've got this situation which is going to occur when you follow the recipe of the religious right and the abstinence only methodology, and you get this set up for failure. You're going to fail, and then we're going to hammer you about it, and we're going to make horrible consequences for you, and you're going to see how bad you messed up your life because you didn't do what God wanted you to do. And then when you go and you do what God wants you to do, well, then your parents are behind you. But you got to be penitent. You got to come and say how ashamed you are of how horribly you messed up, and look what you did, and look how ashamed we all are, and you've embarrassed the entire family, and you sinned against God. And then this kid runs the gauntlet of shame, deals with whatever she has to deal with the rest of her life, a child that she knows is out there that's hers, that she may or may not have any connection to. This is going to haunt her for the rest of her life in an environment where she's in a religious environment where people are going to judge her for that, and okay, well, you're forgiven now and it's all wiped clean, but boy, that was a mistake. That's the whole reason that Jesus needed to die, because stupid things like you just did. And in the end, the only way she's going to be accepted is to say, I'm very sorry for what I did, and I'm going to live my life for God now, and look what happened when I didn't. I just got nothing but hammered. So she grabs hold of that magic feather, and then from that point on, my life was never so good as when I went back and picked up that magic feather again.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's no surprise.
And on another note to the parents, I have a sneaking suspicion, based on what they've said, and this is something that they're probably going to hang over her head forever. Every time she starts to make anything that they view as a misstep, it'll come back to yes, this is going to turn out just like that time that you got pregnant and we had to cover for you.
God help her if the 10-year-old ends up in the same situation.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then that's going to be her fault too. Well, look at the example you set for your sister, and you're responsible for this if she hadn't seen you do it.
The only thing is that if the 10-year-old ends up in the same situation when she's 16, she'll have a 22-year-old sister who may actually have learned something from this, who can help her get away from a couple of ignorant parents who are unwilling to, love and help their children.
Anyway, but my point with things like this is, I don't give credit to a religion for giving somebody self-esteem and helping the girl get through this, when the religion itself is responsible for the error or for whatever consequences occur. Making the problem. If you made the problem and then you offer some ounce of help to try to get it resolved, no, you don't get credit for that. It's your responsibility to resolve it completely. And to say that this is a situation that can never be resolved. It's like trying to stuff the genie back in the bottle. This is done.
Yeah.
So this can't be fixed. So religion here has made a situation where this cannot be fixed. It can only be, the mess can be only cleaned up to a certain level, and that's going to be it. And I'm not going to give religion credit if this girl says the only way I got through it was because of, my religion and all the people that helped me at my church. And it's like, no, I don't give it credit. You messed her up. And so whatever help you gave her, you owed her. And the same with her parents. Whatever help you give her, whatever help you deny her, you shouldn't deny her anything, but whatever help you give her, you owe it to her. So don't pretend that you're doing so much for her. You're doing it to clean up your own mess. And, that's my rant for this week.
And a damn good rant at that. The number's up. As a reminder, we're going to El Arroyo after the show. There's about 14 minutes, or actually there's 12 minutes and 54 seconds left in the show. They put the address up while we were talking, and I didn't want to interrupt Tracie while she was on a roll because it was inspiring. There's the address for El Arroyo. We're on the show for another 12 and a half minutes. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us down there. You do not have to be a member to attend. We'll be down there for an hour or 2 hours, whatever. Have a dinner and drink. Conversation about parenting. I'm betting, since that's a subject that comes up from time to time. Russell Glasser's actually done some talk about atheist parenting on this program as a third-generation atheist himself. So that's always interesting. Tracie and I are both coming from a religious background where we were religious to a surprising age for me.
Yeah. And if I would have ever gotten pregnant, there is no way in hell I would have ever spoken to my parents about it. Never. I would have never gone to them. I would not have felt comfortable going to. It would have been like last resort.
Would you have had an abortion even if you were opposed to it at the time?
I might have out of pure fear of my parents. I might have.
Yeah. So the fear of your parents being disappointed with you would trump your...
That's the thing that people don't get. When a kid is 16 years old and you say, if you ever come home in that situation like the neighbor, I'll kill you.
You better pack your bags.
When you tell a child that, you don't understand the level of fear that puts in that kid. As a parent, you might be, it's not true. You're not going to kill your kid. But the kid only hears, oh my God, I don't even want to think about it. You're the person that's been disciplining this child, and probably with corporal punishment, if you're religious right. And so when you're telling this child, you don't even want to know what would happen to you if you come home in that situation. Believe me, when that kid gets in that situation, it takes a lot of balls for a kid to come and tell you, this is the situation I'm in, because they think you're really going to kill them. It's like...
Yeah. Even if they understand that you're not going to actually shoot them...
It's bad. They know it's bad.
No kid wants to disappoint their parents that much. Nobody wants to face... They already know they're going to have to face consequences, and they don't want to face additional consequences. They'd rather... What they're looking for you is understanding, comfort, and hopefully advice and direction on how to resolve this.
Right.
And
support.
But the thing is yes, I'm willing to blame the parents on this, although, to be fair, this is probably the way they were raised too, and they don't know any better. It's not like we have really good parenting classes going on. Everybody, for the most part, jumps into being a parent with virtually no knowledge apart from how they were raised. And this idea that, well, it worked well enough for my parents and I turned out okay, so I'll parent roughly the same way, and my kids will turn out okay. That's kind of the way it goes, and that, I think, is why we see disturbing trends in families of things that aren't necessarily genetic. I'm not saying that everybody's a I will. I'm pretty sure everybody's a crappy parent on some level. If you have a kid, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw that kid up a little bit, a lot, somehow, some way. It's like if you bought a motorcycle. One of these days, you're going to lay that bike down. If you go into buying a motorcycle knowing that this is going to happen, not only does it make it less likely to happen, but it makes you prepared for what's going to happen eventually. And you don't panic and turn a bad situation into a worse one. Somebody in the studio asked what dear Abby said in response. Wasn't really worth reading. It's basically, don't worry about it. She'll see what's going on with her older sister and she'll understand it.
Well, I think, though, I don't know whether or not to take it as a backhanded advice, because it almost, to me, it almost sounds disapproving, as though Abby's saying, this is what you're going to do, not necessarily that she's saying, I approve of it. And then at the end, I think she really does hit it. So what Abby says, just because somebody asked, Your younger daughter will learn a great deal as Nola's pregnancy progresses, which I think she is going to learn a great deal because the parents have never told her this. She will see your disappointment, hear your disapproval of sex outside of marriage, not to mention how irresponsible Nola and the father of the baby were for not using birth control. Now, Abby's not saying that, the way it's written, Abby is not saying that Nola and the boy were irresponsible. She's saying your 10-year-old is going to hear you say this.
I don't think they will. I think that what they'll hear is that they were responsible for having sex, not using birth control.
You're right. But basically what Abby does is she runs down all the condemnation that the parents are putting down, and she says, your 10-year-old is going to hear you condemning over and over again your 16-year-old. So don't worry about it. She'll get the message that this was not the thing you wanted done. But then at the end, she says, so worry less and spend more time letting both of your daughters know you love them unconditionally. And totally, that is absolutely what's missing in this relationship. The kid did not know that. If she knew her parents would love her unconditionally, they would have known she was having sex.
All right, so based on Tracie's reading of that, I've completely changed my mind on the nature. You've seen it right here. I've changed my position again. It's not useless dribble about she'll figure it out. You interpreted it in a way where now I have a different understanding.
Yeah, I think sometimes Abby basically throws up her hands and says, this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And I think she understood that there was really no changing what these parents are going to do as a reaction.
I'm gonna save the letter of the week because we've actually got callers on the line and I want to go ahead and get to him. Is it Chuck?
Yes.
How you doing, Chuck?
Just fine. Hey, I read something today that I didn't know, and maybe you know more about it, but it said that I could not buy a motorcycle on Sunday.
Is that like
and so what is that a religious thing or what?
I don't know.
And the reason I bring this up is because whenever I was a kid, they had the blue laws,
right?
And they would have entire aisles at the stores roped off where you couldn't buy anything on that aisle. You could buy a nail, but you couldn't buy a hammer,
right?
And that kind of gibberish. And so I called the store and asked them why can't I buy this on Sunday, and they really didn't know. She said she thought that it was a religious thing, and so I didn't know if you. I mean, because if it is the blue laws, I thought those things were long gone.
Yeah,
and I was really surprised.
For the most part, I thought they were. This is the first I've heard of it. I have no idea if it's true, and I have no idea why it's true if it is. I'd love to make up something funny right now, but I can't.
No, I absolutely think it's bizarre. It's like you can ride it on a Sunday morning, but you can't buy it. So it's like you say, it's almost like telling somebody you can't buy a bong on Sunday morning, but you can sit in your front porch and smoke pot. I mean,
yeah. Well, the blue laws that they had back in the 60s or 70s, whenever that was. That was just ridiculous. The church trying to impose its will, if that's the case, if it is the church that is saying, well, we don't want anybody buying motorcycles on Sunday, then what do you do?
I know
you
why.
sue them, or how does that work?
I know why.
The church?
It's because the Nazis rode motorcycles. And Nazis, of course, are the product of atheism and Darwinism.
There you go.
And we learned that from Expelled. So atheism leads to Darwinism, leads to Nazism. Nazis liked motorcycles. Motorcycles are bad. You can't buy motorcycles on Sunday. See, we can do
okay. Now I got it.
I'll tell you what. Maybe the reason you can't buy motorcycles on Sunday is because the dealership's closed.
Well, actually, this was it was Pep Boys is where it was.
Oh.
It was.
They sell motorcycles?
I don't know. Can I say anyway?
Do they sell motorcycles?
They have these little. Street legal. I don't even know who makes them, but the reason I wasn't going to buy one, I was just looking at the ad in the paper, and then it said not available for sale on Sunday. That's what, because I'm completely against the.
I tell you what, Chuck, find out what you can and call us back. I'm going to try and look into this too because this may be one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
Okay, all right.
Boy, have I heard some funny stuff this week. But telling, it's to see the ad, here's a little scooter thing or whatever, not for available for sale on Sunday.
Right.
Why? That's crazy.
And another thing, you were talking about Darwin there, and article in the paper a few days ago about the Texas Board of Education or UT or somebody turned down the church who was trying to get the whatever their course is about, evolution or whatever it is they're trying to teach. Turned them down to make it a course at UT, I guess. Is that what it was?
No, it's a little more complicated than that. The Institute for Creation Research was looking for, it's not really accreditation, but it's approval from the state of Texas to be allowed to grant degrees in Christian Science. They'd be operating as their own university, and they were turned down unanimously. They've tried this before in California. They'll try it again.
Thank goodness our government got something right, and turned them down, because that's absurd. And I, from what I've found out about them, they believe that God created the universe. Was it 3,000 years ago or 6,000 years ago?
4 to 10, depending on which one you talk to.
Yeah, and the thing that I read that just blew my mind was, here was their spokesman saying, we are biased towards creationism, but we still think we teach good science.
Yeah.
And, the man doesn't have a clue what science is. I mean, you have no bias towards anything if you have good science.
Just the truth.
Exactly, the facts. And, thank goodness they turned them down. That's all
We're running out of time. I got to let you go, Chuck.
Okay.
Everybody decided to call in at the last minute, but thanks for calling.
All right, bye.
As a reminder, if you called in, turned on your television, listen just on the phone. If you don't get through, you can email TV@atheist-community. I went backwards, didn't I? So it's TV@atheist-community.org. See, I got it wrong.
That's okay.
And please include like NPR or AETV or something like that in the subject line so we get through there. So it gets through to us. Mike, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing? I know I've got one eye on the clock. I know I'm making it quick.
You got like 30 seconds.
So I had the kind of parents, I grew up with the kind of religion and Christianity where it's the kind of parents that the lady's talking about in your show, that where they were loving and understanding no matter what. There was not this heavy-handed guilt. Of course, I was in an Episcopal church, which is half the Catholic, half the guilt. But we turned out a great family. We're really good. There's none of this sexual nonsense going on, in oppression. And I think believe that's how Jesus probably really originally was, and his message got, skewed and attacked all the way down toward, all this other crap added onto it by the officials of the church. Anyway,
you may be right, but the world will never know until we find some actual evidence of what he said or that he existed or anything else. I appreciate the call. We are out of time completely. As a reminder to everybody, you can join us down at El Arroyo on 5th Street here in just a few minutes, and there will not be a television show next weekend. They're doing some renovation of the studio, so April 18th is out, and we'll be back on, I believe it's the 25th. We look forward to hearing from you by email. There's the number on the screen if you want to call the voicemail. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks.
May 18th is out.
May. What did I say?
April.
Oh, man. I'm in a time warp.